recognize the Greensboro Swiftwater Rescue Team, which I'll be talking about in a few minutes. I also want to recognize Transportation Secretary Nick Tennyson, Major General Lusk with our NC National Guard, Colonel Gray with our State Highway Patrol, Environmental Quality Department Secretary John Evans, and Emergency Management Director Joe Wright. And this has been quite a week for the state of North Carolina in several areas of our state. First of all, we've had major flooding in the eastern part of the state. It has received absolutely no national attention, partly because of the issues in Charlotte. We've also had a gas shortage due to the pipeline break, which has now basically been returned to normal service. And we also, of course, have the ongoing protest situation in the great city of Charlotte. Very briefly, I do want to briefly talk about to the national audience and to the rest of North Carolina, because it's not been in the news, but we've had extremely serious flooding conditions in eastern North Carolina, some of the worst flooding conditions that we've seen since Hurricane Irene. We have flooding in Bertie, Chowan, Hertford, Camden County is where the major flooding is. To the national audiences and to the statewide audience, over 17 inches of rain in some parts of our state. We also have had flooding in 7 other counties, including Currituck, Dare, Gates, Halifax, Hertford, Northampton, and several others, up to 7 inches of raining. I declared a state of emergency 2 days ago to deal with this flooding, and we also have had a transportation waiver to deal with some very, very serious issues that are going on. The city of, or the town of Windsor is the city that's been most impacted. It's a town of 3,000 individuals. It's underwater right now in many areas. We literally have water up to people's waist and above, and many houses have been flooded. The town is flooded. Right now the water is receding. However, we've had to have over 138 rescues in that general area. Water rescues, 63 people from their homes, 61 from nursing home, 2 from a bridge, 5 actually in downtown Windsor, a 911 call, a very dramatic 911 call where we had to rescue 2 individuals with a truck, and also 2 in a campground. We had swift water teams from Greensboro, Fayetteville, and New Bern who have been participating in these swift water rescues for the past 2.5 to 3 days. They have risked their own lives to do just that. I'd like to thank the swift water teams from these 3 great towns of New Bern, Fayetteville, and Greensboro for their incredible heroism. It's another example of first responders doing their job. They're on the stage with me today. Hey, you guys move away just a little bit and let us give a round of applause to the Greensboro Swift Water Team. I'd like to thank y'all very much. My hometown where I grew up in Guilford County, so thank y'all very much. Y'all can come back now, and they gave me a blue shirt too. I'm going to wear this blue shirt proudly. The second item I want to talk about is, of course, what we've been dealing with for the past 48 hours and anticipate dealing with again tonight. First of all, I want to say that I am so proud of, first of all, the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department. I think they did an outstanding job during the last 2 nights, and last night you couldn't ask for better professionalism from these men and women in blue who did their job, and they're under a lot of fatigue and a lot of stress right now. And I'm just proud of the way they did their job, and I'm proud of the chief of police also in doing his job. Yesterday, I gave total authority to have the chief of police also coordinate our National Guard. General Lusk, who is here with me today, has got very little sleep during the past 24 hours, and neither did many National Guard. And we're talking about hundreds of individuals who traveled throughout the night before last, on buses and other types of transport, primarily Humvees. And these men and women who primarily have part-time jobs, many were coming to Charlotte for the first time because they come from all over the state. And I got to greet them when they arrived at the Guard headquarters yesterday in Charlotte before they were deployed out on the streets of Charlotte, and I just was so impressed with their professionalism, with their willingness to do their job, and of course with their follow-through. And I think the rest of the nation, the rest of the state saw the valuable tool that the National Guard is for our country and for the state of North Carolina. What they did upon extremely short notice last night under very, very trying conditions in supporting the police department of Charlotte was, I think, just a role model for guards in all 50 states. And I'd just like to personally thank the general for his outstanding professionalism of his team and all your commanders for the work that they've done. The chief, that we anticipate them still wanting to be deployed through the weekend. I have committed whatever resources he needs, and I will follow his directive. And again, thank you very much to the National Guard. You saw people hugging them hugging back. It was the best of America that we saw. I'm proud of you. I'm very proud of you. I'd like to also thank our Highway Patrol, our troopers. Again, we're not given the number of troopers that we sent, but we sent a lot. And they're still there. And they're sleeping right now, getting ready for another night. I hope some of them are sleeping. They're all on cots in Charlotte at this point in time. And I again like to thank Colonel Gray and his team for the incredible work that they did last night in protecting the highways, in protecting overpasses, and also protecting infrastructure in and around downtown Charlotte and throughout the city. And our men and women in black and gray, I just thought did an outstanding job. And to you, Colonel Gray, and to Frank Perry, my secretary, I'd like to thank you very much for your leadership. I also want to, as the mayor stated earlier today, I want to thank the members of the Charlotte community and the neighborhood leaders, a city that is close to my heart since I was mayor there for 14 years. We saw the best of Charlotte last night. We saw the best of Charlotte in very tense situations where we had community leaders and members of the clergy step in between the Guard and some individuals that were not wanting to engage in a peaceful process and wanting to cause trouble. And they're diffusing, community leaders diffusing the situation also was the best of Charlotte and the best of North Carolina. And we're going to still need you in the coming week night and a Saturday night. As the mayor and the chief of police said, we need the community leaders as much as we need and more the public safety officials. So I want to thank my hometown of Charlotte for helping in that effort. There are some things that still concern me. First of all, as I think the chief of police stated, there are some groups that are coming into our state that are here to cause anarchy and to not respect our law, respect our property, or to respect our citizens. And I'll say again, as I said the other day, this state, this governor, and the city of Charlotte will not tolerate the destruction of property, the harming of individuals, and especially attacks toward the men of our National Guard. And that also, the men and women of first responders, the firefighters, the medics, who are putting themselves on the line to deal with a very, very difficult issue. And I say that very strongly to those individuals who are coming into our state and some who live in our state who want to cause harm to our basic society norms and our democratic process. We will not accept. We will not tolerate it. And again, I appreciate those citizens who are also stepping in and saying this is not the best of America. In those types of behaviors of destruction and hurting other people. I'm also very pleased that the police department, as my understanding, has made an arrest of a suspect in the shooting death of an individual during the protest 2 nights ago. I'm very pleased to see someone in custody. There were a lot of false rumors out there regarding being involved in that shooting. Sadly, some of those individuals were even interviewed on national broadcasts last night that I saw, and that's just irresponsible that you allow such false information to be on the air, which again stirs up tension in this state and this community and in this nation, because I'm convinced and I very much trust that no one from law enforcement was involved at all, and I'm glad that they've arrested a suspect based upon a lot of video evidence and other witnesses, and I commend the police department for doing their job in that area. I just want to let you know, based upon just most recent conversations, literally in the last hour with the Chief of Police, the Chief of Police again has requested that we continue to have the National Guard presence and the presence of the SBI and the presence also of the Highway Patrol, North Carolina Highway Patrol, through Sunday. And if it comes earlier and things calm down, maybe many of these men and women can come back home and also help us in the rest of the state. But we'll do anything we can in the state of North Carolina to support the great city of Charlotte and to keep it safe. And we'll fulfill those obligations. I do want to let everyone know in the state that this does not come without a cost. In fact, we've had some costs due to the flooding of about $81,000 at this point in time that we will be pulling out of the emergency funds. We have cost because of the Colonial Pipeline rupture of about $185,000 out of our emergency fund. And then at this point in time, as of today, the Charlotte cost to bring the Guard and the Highway Patrol and lodging and meals and things of this nature and transportation is at this point in time up to $287,000. So the state of North Carolina is incurring these costs, but that's exactly why we have reserves, is to deal with emergencies. And this is an emergency that I signed on to, and I committed to helping the great city of Charlotte, the elected officials, and especially the public safety officials in the city. And we'll continue to fulfill that obligation. I do want to let you know of one other issue, or two other issues. I do want to let you know that the State Bureau of Investigation has initiated the investigation regarding the initial shooting that drew the protest. I do want to let you know that they've actually been working on this for several days, and up to this point in time, they have already identified and interviewed, they believe, most of the critical witnesses. So that's just to let the public know that they're working very hard, but however, there are still interviews that they need to conduct, but they do believe that they have interviewed most of the critical witnesses at this point in time. I also want to let the public know that the video that's been such a part of the citywide, statewide, and now national conversation, I do want to let you know that the State Bureau of Investigation here in North Carolina is in possession of a copy of that video. The Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department is still the custodian of the original tape. So now we have two different bodies who have somewhat control of the evidence, but the Charlotte custodian of the original tape. I also want to let you know that I think we all have three basic goals regarding not only the tape, but our criminal justice system. And that is, first of all, we have to make sure that there's a fair investigation. And that's a very important part of the independent investigation being done by the State Bureau of Investigation. That is a priority, to make sure there's a fair and thorough investigation. The second goal is we have to make sure that we protect the constitutional rights of any of those that are currently being investigated. And frankly, anytime there is a incident of this matter, it is a criminal investigation. Anytime there is any type of incident of this matter, whether it be a law enforcement officer or anyone else, it is technically by law a criminal investigation. So now more than ever, we have to make sure that we protect the constitutional rights of any individual being involved in that investigation. That is our responsibility. And we're going to make sure we fulfill that responsibility as we would expect of each one of us during such a time. The other issue that we are, of course, very sensitive to is we want to make sure there is transparency and there is compelling public interest in this information. And those always are not a clear balance and a clear line. And that's the struggle that all the public officials are going through, is meeting those three goals, making sure we meet the compelling public interest in this issue, ensuring that there is a fair and thorough investigation, and also protecting the constitutional rights of those being investigated. And those three at times conflict with each other. And we have to understand the fair and reasonable balance of those three items. I want to let you know that there are ongoing discussions with the district attorney, between the district attorney, where we've had several discussions, but I anticipate ongoing discussions between the chief of police and the district attorney, Andrew Murray, regarding his obligation to meet those first two goals we stated. He has certain ethical obligations that he's sworn to uphold regarding protection of evidence. And we've got to respect his responsibility as the Mecklenburg DA. And I do know there are discussions regarding the videotape with the Mecklenburg District Attorney, and maybe more of that information will be communicated in the near future regarding the results of that information and to ensure that we meet our three goals. I personally firmly believe that we have to make sure that we have to take the politics out of any release of evidence. It should be not based upon any political interest. And frankly, I think the new law that's coming into effect on April 1 is a sound and reasonable process in which you have a judge who is separate from a police department or the SBI or politicians who can maybe make an independent decision so those three goals that I mentioned earlier can be met. And that's one reason we passed this law. It was exactly for situations like this in which there's a conflict between constitutional rights of individuals going through the judicial process while also the public's interest in getting as much information as possible. And often we pass this law for October 1st implementation exactly to handle these types of situations where a judge can determine the balance of those three goals and make that decision. So that's the process we're in right now. I cannot emphasize how proud I am of the state of North Carolina, the city of Charlotte. For whatever reason, there is a lot of attention on Charlotte only, when in fact the issue that we're dealing with is a national issue. In fact, we have these national issues that are occurring weekly regarding violence in our country. But if there's going to be an epicenter of this and other issues, we'll accept that responsibility. And we're resilient, we're honest, we're fair, and we're going to deal with it. And if we can be a role model for the rest of the nation on how to deal with these type of issues that the nation is often torn about, we'll be glad to do just that. So with that, I'll be glad to take a few questions. And if you could recognize yourself, and then I'll do the best I can to answer your questions, either about the floods, and I want you to pray for the people there. And this would be national news in the floods if we didn't have all the reporters in Charlotte at this point in time. We're dealing with a lot more than 200 protesters in Charlotte, right? I mean, in eastern North Carolina, we're dealing with people who are underwater right now. So that's very, very important to us as governor. Yes, sir, if you could recognize yourself. And
Steve Frazier, CBS North Carolina, kind of keying off on you said about the politics of the situation. Your opponent, now also the Attorney General, has said that he would like that tape to be released. Your thoughts on that, sir?
You know, I don't know if the Attorney General is speaking as an Attorney General or as a candidate. Therefore, it'd be improper for me to respond. I'm speaking as governor of North Carolina. I have a responsibility as governor to ensure that we meet those three goals, and I'm going to do just that in the most proper and respectful way because I care for the process and I respect the process. And so not knowing the position in which he was speaking, it would be improper for me to respond. And I'm not going to bring politics into this issue whatsoever. Yes, sir.
Governor, if they want me to hold the microphone.
Yes, sir, microphone.
Okay. Governor Ed Crump with ABC 11. You mentioned the new law coming out. And I think most of us are familiar, in the press corps are familiar with that law. But I take it this can't be handled under that new law. So what kind of pitfalls do you encounter not having the new law in place and facing the things that you were talking about?
Well, actually, there's some aspects of the new law that could be considered now regarding going to a judge to determine whether or not a tape should be held or restricted from viewing or not, because that's the basic law that will be starting in October 1st. And in fact, that will be in effect on October 1st. Whether we do it now or do it later, I assume on October 1st, when the new law is enacted, someone will be requesting that tape, and it will most likely go to a third-party arbitrator, which would be the judge. So it's kind of a unique situation that the law that I've already signed just happened to not be into effect until October 1. But that's not saying that process couldn't be considered at this point in time.
Are you encouraging the Mecklenburg County DA to get this to a judge, to do it that way?
I'm respecting a thoughtful discussion on hearing all points of view to ensure that the three goals that I put forward are met. And again, that's where the conflict comes. I respect the Mecklenburg DA's responsibility of ensuring that there's a fair investigation, and I'm also want to respect the police officers who is going through, I'm sure, a very difficult process at this time too, and balancing that with the public's want to know. And but I think those discussions are ongoing with the DA, or will be ongoing, and I think the chief of police is also interested in having those ongoing discussions. And again, I want to state for the record that the city of Charlotte still has custody of the tape. That has not changed, of the custody of the original evidence of that tape.
One last follow-up, if I may, Governor. Are you concerned that if it is released, that there's already you're not seeing exactly what happened by a body? Are you concerned that release of the video might leave an impression that isn't accurate?
I think the chief of police has stated his concerns extremely well, and I would concur that you got to be extremely careful on how and when to release information, because I hope you don't take this in the wrong vein, but you know, I've watched a football game last week on TV and saw 4 different replays, and each showed something different. You know, camera angles and everything mean a lot, and there are a lot of other circumstances involved in other situations. And it's not just the camera that's involved in an incident. There are many other factors involved, and it'd be inappropriate for me to discuss those other factors. But the main factor, we have to respect the law and the process of the law. While I understand that some of the networks, whether it be CNN or Fox or MSNBC and others, want immediate access, we've got a responsibility to follow the law and respect the constitutional process of individuals. And that's the balance that we're seeking in our country with this new technology, and also the balance we're seeking in North Carolina, and hopefully we'll be a role model. And again, the new law that's been somewhat criticized and misrepresented is actually allowing a judge to help make that decision, which we do in many other conflicts throughout our country. I thought it was common sense with regard to that. Who hasn't asked a question yet?
Brian Jarvis with the News Observer.
Yes, sir, Mr.
Have
Jarvis.
you spoken with Reverend Barber today, and if so, could you describe what that was about?
Yeah, I actually had a very, very nice conversation. I happened to be walking out of a TV interview of a studio here in Raleigh, and he was using the other studio, and he was in his car, and I walked up, and he rolled down his window, and we probably talked 15, 20 minutes. I first complimented him and the clergy for playing a productive role during some of the protests in calming things down. And I was very impressed with much of the clergy in the Charlotte region. And I said, if you had anything to do with it, I compliment you for doing that, because this is at a time when we need to have dialogue and respect, as opposed to screaming and shouting, and especially violence. So we also talked about some other issues that he's interested in regarding some other cases where I've agreed to meet with him regarding another case that's happening in North Carolina. And I've done that with many families. As you've known, I've granted pardons for 3 different individuals, and he has expressed interest in me meeting with a group of lawyers in the future. And I think Thomas Stiff, my chief and my lawyer, met with some representatives. Maybe later on, I've committed to meet with family members of another issue that Reverend Barber's interested in. So I appreciate we had a great conversation today, and I complimented also, he looked good. He's getting healthier. That's good to see. Who else has not asked any questions? We'll take one more then and go here.
Not trying to throw your curve, Governor, but apparently there was about 1 million gallons of waste sewage from Elizabeth City. Does anybody on the dais know anything about that? Was it flood related, do you know, sir?
I do not know, but does anyone know?
We're still trying to confirm.
We're still trying to confirm whether that there's a sewage release in Elizabeth City or not. We're getting a lot of, again, this is what's amazing. Here's one of the major floods in the United States right now, and no one knows about it. And that's not fair to the people who are suffering through those floods, but we'll check to see if there is a sewage release in that wonderful city. Thank you all very much again. I want to encourage the media, do your job, but also do not engage in increasing the tensions. That is not productive. It may be productive for some viewers, but it's not productive for our society and our nation. And so I just ask you to also look for that fine balance, as we're finding a fine balance in dealing with very complex situations. I appreciate you all very much. Thank you very much.